What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to the bench for a brand new episode here on Sci-Fi Wednesdays. We are back on Anakin's Podracer, and today we're going to move away from the engines into the pod itself. So this should be pretty cool. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. Before we get started, though, let's review from last time. We went ahead and finished up our engines. These are primed, painted. We also have the other colors on there. We have some silver, some red, some blue, yellow. So we are pretty much done with these. All we have to do next is seal them, and then we can come in with the pin wash and really pop all that other little subtle detail. So yeah, we're looking pretty decent with these. And I will say that I'm really happy with how these have turned out. We also went ahead and painted up the front little cone here. That is going to drop on eventually to the very front, and we'll have the 3 foils coming out of the very front of the engine itself. But we're going to wait on that for right now, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Like I mentioned, I wanted to go ahead and start today on the pod itself because there are a lot of little things we have to do. The engines are done though, except for those front foils, but we'll get those a little bit later. And we're just going to move over to like Anakin and the center cockpit area and the tub and the pod and all the different attachment points. We have to get all of these glued into place. However, we're not going to push it all the way to the last few steps. We're going to leave those alone because there's just too many things to put on. And right now, I want to focus on trying to build up the pod itself so that we can throw in some LEDs, maybe figure out some lighting, really get in there and have some fun with it. So that's what we're going to focus on today's episode. So should be fun. We should get some stuff done for sure. Just before I go on though, I wanted to go over the engines one more time, kind of zoom in here for you, kind of walk through what I did. So the initial plastic parts are all painted up, and we've used colors like flat red for the detail section on the bottom of the engine. Tamiya flat red is awesome. I love Tamiya paint, so I'll use that for the red. We also came in with a little bit of chipping solution, in this case for scratches and light effects like that. It worked great. I didn't have much problem with it. In fact, it worked a little bit too good, so I had to come in and kind of doctor them up just a little bit and tone them down. But we also went ahead and used a black basing by Allclad, and that's going to be what we use on the pod itself. And I absolutely love this paint. It works really, really well for that shiny metal look. I went ahead and used something that I thought would be a little bit better for kind of aged metal, and I used REF High Speed Silver, another all-clad color. Absolutely love this stuff. It is quite potent though, so my suggestion is if you're going to spray it outdoors or spray it with a ventilator or a spray booth, so that would work pretty decently. But great paint overall. I absolutely love all-clad for metallizing colors, and as you can see, we applied it over all the engines, and yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Now for the other detail work like this blue band, we use, again, Tamiya, we use a flat blue. Again, I love Tamiya. It's my go-to paint, and you can see a little bit of yellow here as well, and that yellow is actually aqueous by Mr. Hobby, and this is that kind of nice orangey yellow that I use on a lot of different applications. So this is great paint as well, and I applied this on all the different parts like the side vents, the little band around the engine, and of course the nose, the front intake, and the foils coming forward. You'll notice though there's certain sections of the engine that are a little darker, like around the end of the exhaust right here. That is actually an engine exhaust color by, again, Allclad, just called Jet Exhaust. It's great for kind of shading down and toning down some of the metal, give it a bit of a worn look. Now I do plan on coming back though and going over this with a pin wash, so that should help to pop all those details. That's just going to add a little extra flavor. Now for all the piping, we went ahead and used some paint pens, and this is actually the set that I picked up. This is chrome marker, and a big shout out to BG for telling me about these particular markers. These worked great. I used the gold marker just to go ahead and give a little bit of color to the engines, and I might do something similar when I get to the pod and start painting that up. I might also go back and use some of these as well. Awesome markers. The color itself is super bright, very glossy. Like it says on the label, very much chrome. Then for the other wires and piping, I use just a plain old aluminum by Tamiya. Again, I love Tamiya. This is not my favorite aluminum color, but it is one that I had on hand, and I thought it would blend nicely with the bright gold and then any other coloring that I may use. So yeah, I like it. Looks pretty decent. Aside from that though, we do have to come back and eventually overcoat everything with a gloss coat, and then we can come in, we can do a little bit of weathering, and of course fix up a couple of seam issues right here. We got a little bit of a burr we have to go ahead and sand down, but other than that, the engines are looking pretty sweet. Now mounting the engines down to the base, we're going to have to drill a hole through the bottom of the engine so we could feed through all of our wires. And honestly, we only have a couple wires to feed through, but I'm going to go ahead and use this right here, and I'm going to use the small diameter pipe. And all I'm going to do is cut a little bit of a piece off of this, drill a hole through the engine, and then feed this up through it, and then pull down those wires through that pipe. That will act not only as a support, but also as a channel to get my 3 wires from the engine down into the base. then I can hook it up to the power supply and we're good to go. So as you can see, we have 2 wires here. We'll have 1 more wire coming out of the side for the emitter, and then that's it. So let's go ahead and move on now to some of the action here for the video, and we're going to jump into the pod like I mentioned. So the first thing we're going to do is clean up all the basic parts. We're going to get some details figured out. We're going to test fit some stuff. We're going to see how this goes together. Then we can go ahead and start just kind of gluing everything together. You'll notice that there is quite a bit of flash on the different parts, and just from looking here, I don't think I'm going to be able to put any sort of fiber optics into the side panels. There's just not enough room between the tub of the cockpit and the cockpit sidewalls themselves. So it is what it is. I'm going to definitely try to add lights into the front gauges on the instrument panel, but we'll see how that goes. First things first though, let's go ahead and get in there and let's see how this all goes together. Everybody, so we are back and we have the pod coming together. We haven't glued all the different parts and pieces in there just yet. We're just kind of in the process of test fitting and figuring out where to put what and how we're going to throw some lights in this. And to be honest, the part fit doesn't look like it's going to be very stellar. There's a couple of areas that I know we're going to have gaps. The front part of the pod itself is actually warped, so it kind of scoops upwards. So that's going to have to be fixed. It isn't too bad. It's just going to take a little bit more work to get it up to par. So we're going to go ahead and now and jump back into another time lapse, and I want to add in some scratch built details because there's a lot of areas there on the sidewall that just needs something there. So we're going to grab some solder. We're going to grab some different parts and pieces. I've got a ton of stuff I pulled out of the spares box. So we'll grab things like actuators or maybe some panels or maybe some control consoles or something. We're going to take those and we're going to retrofit them to fit here inside the pod. We're not going to add too many because it's very cramped in there, but we do have, like I said, a couple of areas that really could use a little bit of sprucing up. So let's go ahead and get back in there, guys. And after we get the parts scratch built and installed in there, I want to do a little bit more additional cleanup, and we need to go ahead and start assembling some of the kit parts to go ahead and get those ready for final installation. We have to come back in and work a little bit more on a couple of other sub-assemblies, and I think we're ready to go ahead and try to get those LEDs installed into the different areas, and we'll just see how it goes. So back on into the time lapse, let's push this forward. Let's keep it going. everybody. Well, as you can see, the pod has been significantly cleaned up. We've got a lot of the parts glued into the inside tub, and this is what I'm talking about here. You can see that the front section is warped. It does have a little bit of a springy, kind of a diving board effect. We don't want that. We'll eventually have to fix it, but otherwise, it's not too bad. The parts are coming together with a little bit of scratch detail here and there. It adds a whole lot of life to it. Plus, I've kind of fooled around a little bit with the front instrument panel. I've bored out a couple of the screens, and I think I've got an idea of how to make this work. So let me go ahead and kind of just piece this together, and let's zoom in and I'll show you some of what I have done, make this thing look a little bit more lived in. So check it out. First off, we've added in a couple of scratch built parts. For example, we have a lever next to the seat, as well as a bunch of wires coming out of the different consoles. And we have some form of cylinder, fire extinguisher, or maybe it's just an oxygen bottle, I don't know. But as you can see, it's here on the back firewall. And then of course, we added in some custom just punch outs of different discs of styrene to go ahead and give them a look like a control panel or some sort of junction box. And then again, like I mentioned, a lot of our cabling we added in from different sizes of solder. We also drilled holes underneath those side consoles so that the wires look like they go somewhere. And then we just fished them in, pulled them down through, and glued them together. You'll notice I added one little part on the side wall as well, just to give it a little bit more interest. But honestly, these sides are pretty much mirror images of each other. Of course, I also installed the cockpit and the sidewalls in there. It tells you to build that separately and then to glue that into the base after it's all done. But I decided to go ahead and glue it into the base right off the bat. I think that's just a better way to do it because you can test fit and you can make sure that you won't have any gaps and everything lines up correctly. So I think that's a good move to make. Who needs instructions anyway, right? They're just suggestions. Anyway, we also have to fill in that gap at the bottom, and we're going to go ahead and get on that probably next time lapse. We'll take some jeweler files to that and get that all nicely cleaned up. We also have to figure out what we need to do for the LEDs. And as you can see here, I've drilled a couple of holes through the instrument panel, and I'm going to be using these tiny SMDs, and they fit pretty much right in the middle of each of these gauge faces. And I think what we can do is just glue those in there and then maybe put some diffusing paper or something over the top of that so that they aren't so bright. But just giving you a quick look, that's what it looks like right here. We have one installed. If we have two other ones there on either side, it's going to look pretty cool. It's going to be very bright though, so we will have to go ahead and tone it down just a tiny bit, but I think we can do it. I think we can make it work. So like I said, back into that time lapse, guys, let's go ahead and clean up those seams, get the exterior details all built up, work on those side structures, and yeah, we'll see how we do, and we'll be back and I'll show you guys our finished product for today. All right, let's do it. right, everybody, so here we go. This is the pod as it stands right now. No, it's not entirely glued together. I still have the top of it loose, but I thought I'd go ahead and show you guys what we've come up with. And as you can see, we got our wire hanging out the bottom there. That's just kind of placed in there. It's not glued or anything. And this is actually really kind of a cool little setup here. We'll eventually glue everything in, of course, but we want to go ahead and light block things and install things and get you a real quick zoom in here. And you can see we've got the wires in there. This again is still a springboard, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We'll fix it up at some point. We've got the seat in there. We've got our extra details. And again, those little switch panels that I made just out of punched circles and styrene squares. And then our little wires, our side consoles, they just kind of flow into the underside footwell. So that's fine. Same thing on the other side. And we added in a little fire extinguisher or oxygen bottle, whatever you want to have it be, and then a lever on the other side of the chair, just again to add a little bit more life to the cockpit. And everything fits nicely in there. It looks busy enough. I could even add more wires, but I think I'm going to wait, and I'm pretty happy with how this looks so far. In terms of the LEDs, I already talked briefly about those. We have these drilled out. And I'm kind of anticipating going ahead and taking the LEDs and fishing them through the openings and then going ahead and putting the decals on, because we do have decals that show different gauges and whatnot, so that might work decently. The gauges below are completely fictitious. They don't actually exist in the movie, so I don't know what to do with those, so I've right now just blocked them off. Maybe I can do something with them at some point, but I gotta kind of think about it. For the exterior, I've added in these little side detailings and these, I guess, feet of some sort of detailing. Those are glued in place. This is kind of an awkward fitting area. These, I guess, are air brakes, and there are definite gaps around different areas where they're not supposed to be, such as up here on the front with the intakes. The rear portion, yeah, that'll have a gap. However, they just don't fit that well. We're going to do the best we can, though, fill up some of those areas and try to get this looking a little bit cleaner, because the front section needs to be filled, and we can do that once we go ahead and fix the diving board effect of the top of the pod. The rear portion will be fine, I'm sure. We can work it out, but this is as we stand right now, and it's actually not too bad. Just a couple of nitpicks here and there. Now, there are other parts we have to go ahead and put on to the pod, such as some little vents in the front, and of course we have some antennas and whatnot, but we're going to do those a little bit later. We're going to focus next time, I think, on the LEDs, and we're going to start placing in these SMDs into those areas that I drilled out. Now we can check out the engines here in comparison to the pod, and you can kind of get an idea of the size and scale of this kit. It is very impressive. The engines themselves look awesome. I love how the piping kind of jumps out at you and all the colors. The pod itself is going to be a little different color for sure. I'm going to probably use like maybe a duraluminum or something. I'm going to try to stay away from the high-speed silver. Still have a lot more parts and pieces to figure out. I need to go ahead and work on the LEDs, get that squared away, do some light blocking, do some general detail painting on the cockpit, and then we'll see where we go, and we'll just keep on having fun. So yeah, no complaints there. That is it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until our next episode, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on episode 5 for more Sci-Fi Wednesdays and Anakin's Podracer. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.